What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers. And today I am joined by Brayden Dowers, as always, and we are going to be previewing Mizzou versus South Carolina for this Saturday. And we're going to break down everything Mizzou football right now, almost kind of like a mini podcast episode, because not only are we going to preview South Carolina, but I did kind of want to hit recruiting just a little bit because we do have some major recruiting news, and we'll kind of start there. So obviously, as you guys know, or you should know by now, five-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, a top Mizzou target from St. Louis. He goes to SLU University High School in St. Louis. He's announcing his commitment next Wednesday on the 25th, and Mizzou is expected to be the choice if you've been reading the tea leaves, looking at the crystal ball predictions, the future casts, even the guys that are super accurate with their predictions, like Steve Wiltfong and Alan True. They've even logged predictions for Mizzou. So it would be shocking at this point if he did not pick Missouri. And in fact, I'm going to be back in town next week, and I'm going to be there covering the announcement, live streaming here on the channel, the commitment of Ryan Wingo. It should be a pretty good day for the Tigers, but obviously that's huge recruiting momentum. So assuming that happens, Brayden, what is your thoughts on the commitment of Ryan Wingo to the Tigers?
If Wingo doesn't commit to Mizzou, I would be shocked. After looking at what he's done over the past month and what he said before, it's inevitable. Whenever he does eventually commit, if it's anything other than Mizzou, like I said, I will be utterly shocked because he skipped out on the Red River rivalry to stay at home and watch Mizzou's game versus LSU. He's going to be in attendance for South Carolina. He was there for the Memphis game. Every single sign is pointing towards Mizzou. Every single reporter has flipped him to Mizzou. Anything besides Mizzou would be an utter shock. He was originally supposed to commit on signing day. That's not going to happen now. He's pushed it up because I think he's made his mind, and I'm pretty sure that we're all expecting Wingo at this point. So, just future, looking into the future next year, Drink has a pretty good shot. You sent the tweet earlier of getting 7 out of 10 of the top recruits in Missouri, which is insane. Drink's doing a really good job recruiting and locking down the borders, getting 2 5-stars, both from Missouri, and Naware and Wingo. Assuming Naware stays, phenomenal job by Drink and recruiting there.
Yeah, the main competition here for the commitment of Ryan Wingo was Texas, and even the Texas publishers are starting to flip their predictions to Missouri. And so I feel like that's a really good sign. And Gabe DeArmond of Power Mizzou had always said that if Ryan Wingo is to move his commitment date up, which he is now doing, it would be pretty shocking if it was anything other than Mizzou, because that would indicate that Ryan Wingo wants to take advantage of the NIL laws, that Missouri now has, because they passed that law a while back that makes it to where if the player signs a financial aid agreement with the school or some sort of other paperwork, they can start earning NIL funds as seniors in high school, meaning if Wingo commits to the Tigers next week, which we all expect, he will be able to start making NIL money. And I think once he made up his mind, he was like, okay, let's go. I'm going to commit to Missouri. Let's take advantage of this. And like you said, it's a phenomenal job by Drinkwitz because he's in line to grab a majority of the top players in the state this cycle, pretty unprecedented. And locking down the borders, like you said, it's super important. It's something that he's said he really wants to do, but he's always kind of struggled to do so, as many Missouri coaches in the past also have. So to be able to do that, it's just a fantastic job. And I think it creates a lot of momentum, because if they can get Wingo, the ceiling for the class gets a whole lot higher, because then you're looking at maybe getting some other players in Missouri that are committed elsewhere to give Missouri a second look. Someone like Jeremiah McClellan, who's currently committed to Ohio State. There's been talks that maybe he could look around, and if they get Wingo on board, that would be huge for that, as well as some other players. So just huge all around man, and this has the potential to be Drink's best class since he's been at Missouri, and that's pretty massive considering he's already signed 2 top 25 classes since he's been here.
Yeah, I think that it all started with Brayden back when he committed to Mizzou and he was Drink's first 5-star.
Yeah,
Seeing a guy from the Columbia area, Columbia St. Louis ish, commit to Mizzou, stay home, have a pretty good season last year, and then seeing what he's doing this year, I think Wingo sees that and he says, I want to be a part of that. I want to be the next Luther Burden. And I think Naware sees something like that and he says, I want to be the burden on the defense. And they want to be, because Burden's going to go down as one of the best Tigers in history. And I don't expect him to leave next year.
right.
So
Yeah, it's pretty awesome times to be a Mizzou fan right now, not just for football, but also for basketball. And the recruiting is just on another level in both sports. Honestly, it's just the kind of success we've never seen before, and a lot of it you can attribute to the NIL law, and then also, like you said, Luther Burden kind of jump started this whole thing because I think Ryan Wingo is seeing what he's doing, kind of the star treatment he's gotten, being this 5-star wide receiver from St. Louis. He's a local kid, and he's been an absolute star, nothing short of it at Missouri, and he wants to try to jump in on that. So hopefully next Wednesday, Ryan Wingo will be added to this class again. I will be there to cover the announcement. I'll be live streaming it on this channel. So make sure you hit that notification bell and subscribe if you aren't already, so you guys don't miss it. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into this South Carolina preview. So Mizzou is coming off a massive win at Kentucky from last week. They absolutely pounced the Wildcats 38-21. Of course, you guys saw the game. Kentucky looked like they were going to roll to victory in the first few minutes, but then Mizzou came storming back, and then they shut the door on Kentucky late in the second half. And it was one of Drink's most impressive wins since he's been here. It was another ranked win, and a ranked win on the road, an area in which Drink has struggled. And now you're 6-1 heading into this South Carolina game. And South Carolina is a team that Mizzou should beat, but this has the potential to be just a little bit of a trap game. And I know you said that on our post game from last week, Brayden, because South Carolina is still an SEC team. And even though their record says 2-4, they still have what can be an explosive offense sometimes. And Spencer Rattler is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Xavier Legette is one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And when you have a duo like that, you can always get upset on the right day. And also, we kind of had this conversation in our group chat too about how a lot of these teams, they don't get as much credit for scheduling strong non-conference opponents in the early season. And then like teams like LSU, everyone says they suck, but it's like they scheduled Florida State, who's also a top 10 team to begin the year. And so it's not like LSU sucks. It's just that they played a really tough schedule. South Carolina is kind of in the same boat. They played North Carolina, who's a top 15 team to start the year. And of course, they lost that game. And Drink even said that in his press conference earlier this week about how this team has had a really tough schedule and they're not overlooking them. So first off, Brayden, what do you make of South Carolina as a team heading into this
matchup? I think that their loss last week to Billy Napier,
that was bad.
That can't happen. Billy Napier is famous for struggling on the road in SEC environments that aren't the swamp. So losing to him at home is definitely not a good look. And I don't really think that Florida is that great of a team because look at what happened to them in Kentucky at Kroger Field. That wasn't even under the lights. That was an 11 a.m. kickoff, and they got ran off the field. So seeing South Carolina lose to them, not great. I know that you think that Shane Beamer is one of the most overrated coaches in the league. I'm kind of jumping on that train, mainly because watching his press conferences, it's sad. Like
it's kind of embarrassing. I was going to talk about that too, but go ahead.
All he does is just blame the players. He's just like, the coaches, we're making the calls. The players just aren't executing. Like, he's taking absolutely no responsibility, and then comes out and apparently he kicks something and has a broken foot. So,
and then tries to laugh it off in the
yeah,
following press conference. And it's like, dude, that's kind of embarrassing.
yeah, like everything about Shane Beamer in the last week has been really, really embarrassing. So, um, I think that the mindset in that South Carolina locker room, I mean, I don't really know what it is, but you're 2-4. They went 8-4 last year and beat two top 10 teams in Clemson and Tennessee. So everybody that was in that locker room last year has to be completely demoralized because you have to win out against really strong SEC competition, which is very unlikely to happen for the remainder of the season. I like a few of their players. Like I remember watching the Georgia game, a player that stood out to me that I'm going to be looking for possibly in the NFL draft this year, maybe next year. Debo Williams at weak side linebacker. He's a guy that I've been keeping my eye on this year. I don't know what he's done as of recently, but I remember that Georgia game. He really stood out to me as the guy that kind of single handedly kept that defense in that game, kind of locked down Brock Bowers and that Georgia offense. Spencer Rattler is the most 50-50 quarterback of all time. It feels like he'll be absolutely terrible one game and then really good the next. But I think that a lot of that hinges on South Carolina's offensive line because they are not good at all. And Mizzou's defensive line, while it isn't the strength of this team, isn't necessarily a weakness either. And they should be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, so I want to go back to the Shane Beamer conversation just a little bit. His press conference after the Florida loss, it was really bad. And I think he had a press conference last week, or maybe it wasn't last week, because I think South Carolina had a bye the week before Florida. Maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe it was Tennessee. I can't remember. But after the Tennessee loss, it was something similar from him in the press conference, just kind of blaming everybody else. And then after the loss against Florida, he's basically saying, "Yeah, we called the right plays. Our players just suck and they can't run the
Yeah.
plays." And it's like you can't say that.
You recruited them.
Yeah, you can't throw your players under the bus like that. And over time, Shane Beamer has just kind of struck me as a little bit of a phony. He's a fine coach when things are going well, but when things aren't going well, he strikes me as a guy that maybe isn't ready for the gig. The job's a little bit too big for him. Can't really handle adversity that well.
And I think this
Drinkwitz,
is
go ahead.
his biggest, like the biggest fork in the road for Shane Beamer's career might be this game because
Yeah.
out and they get absolutely dominated and Mizzou wins like 48-7 or just absolutely blows the rocks off of South Carolina. I don't think that Shane Beamer really makes it much longer South Carolina's head coach. But if he shows up and South Carolina does get that upset win and they're kind of back on track, then it shows that Beamer can handle adversity. But all the signs have pointed towards I don't see that happening. But to be completely fair, I didn't think that Drink was going to be able to get the guys up and ready for the game against Kentucky. So any given Saturday, but I think Mizzou fans have to be feeling pretty confident going into this one. I know that I mentioned that it could have been a trap game on the post game last week, but the more and more I think about this game, the more and more I feel reasonably okay about it. And I personally am looking ahead, but I know that Drink and the players definitely aren't.
Yeah. And then, of course, Shane Beamer broke his foot after getting mad after the Florida loss. And like I said, he kind of tried to laugh it off and all this stuff in the following press conference. And it was just really cringeworthy, kind of embarrassing for their team and their program, kind of shows where they're at right now. It's been a really disappointing season in South Carolina. But this is a game that Mizzou absolutely should win. Just kind of looking at some of the stats. Of course, South Carolina's offense is relatively good. They're averaging about 25 points per game. Um, they're averaging about 370 yards per game. But their defense, man, is just absolutely terrible. And I think we have to start there. And that's Mizzou's biggest advantage in this game. South Carolina is 128th in the country in yards per game given up on defense. They're 87th in the country on third down. one of the I believe they have the worst pass defense in FBS. So like this is a game in which Mizzou's receivers should eat, especially after having a little bit of an off week last week against Kentucky, and then you're at home on top of it. Like I expect Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Marquise Johnson, all those guys to absolutely eat in this game because South Carolina hasn't shown that they've been able to stop anybody. And even against Florida last week in that huge letdown loss, they gave up like a 4th and 12 conversion to Florida towards the end of that game. Just awful, terrible tackling. This defense is an abomination for South Carolina. It's the biggest advantage Missouri has in this game, especially when Brady Cook's been a top quarterback in the country statistically this year. I know South Carolina's run defense has been the better portion of their defense, but I still expect Mizzou to run the ball relatively well in this game and for Cody Schrader to have a Cody Schrader type of game. So
Cody's
I just don't see.
20 for 70 to 80 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing anything that would tell me that South Carolina's defense is going to have a good day against us.
Yeah, I think if South Carolina beats us, it's going to have to be in a shootout. I don't know what the weather's looking like in Columbia on Saturday, but they're going to have to beat our defense, and they're going to have their receivers go over Chris Abrams-Draine. And is Rankstraw back?
We don't know yet. Of course, he was out last game with a groin strain, I believe it was. I'd be kind of surprised if he played in this one. I think they try to give him one more week of rest and then give him the bye week to get ready for the Georgia game.
Like if Ennis isn't playing, I still feel really confident in this game. But if Ennis is playing, then it's kind of.
I mean, even against Kentucky, like Marcus Clark, the backup, got an interception. Drayden Norwood was fine. I mean, I'm not worried against a team like South Carolina if you don't have Ennis.
I mean, we were able to handle Kentucky without him, so I think South Carolina has a much better passing offense than Kentucky because we're a complete bust this year. But I feel pretty good as a Tiger fan going into this game. South Carolina doesn't really have any pass rush to worry about. I know that the interior of Mizzou's line with Connor Tollison, still not the biggest fan of him at center. Honestly, the biggest thing that I'm looking for in this game is just for Mizzou to clean certain things up. Because if you do that heading into a bye and you look like a polished, well-oiled machine of a team going into Athens, that's the only way that you have a shot. And with Brock Bowers being out, I think that you have to start really getting yourself ready for that game. And I think that bye really helps Mizzou get ready for Athens.
Yeah, you just got to make it through this one. It's a game where you can get caught lacking if you're not taking it seriously. But I think Drinkwitz has done a pretty good job getting these guys rallied, even getting up for games.
They're pretty set on 1-0 this week. Like that mentality the entire season, something to prove, just every single week go 1-0. That's the best that you can do. And that's a good mentality that Drinkwitz has established, I think.
And he did a pretty good job giving off that vibe in the press conference too about the fact that they're not overlooking South Carolina, despite the fact that not only does Mizzou just look like the much better team than South Carolina this year. In years past, it was like kind of a toss-up. This year, it's just not really a question. Mizzou is the better team, but that doesn't mean they're automatically going to win. But with that said, against a team like this, you just got to keep the ball rolling. You can't get caught up. Don't get caught up in the number that's next to your name now, since Mizzou's back in the rankings. But this is a matchup that Drinkwitz has owned historically, not only against Shane Beamer, but South Carolina as a program. He even beat them the one year that he was the head coach at App State before coming over to Mizzou. And I don't think he's going to let this season be ruined by losing to them this year, in a year where they're just the way better team.
For sure.
And so that'll bring us to the other side of the ball. South Carolina's offense versus Missouri's defense. Spencer Rattler is a good quarterback. That said, he's no Jaden Daniels, and you're not going to have to worry about him like converting like a 3rd and 13 on the ground with the game on the line. I don't expect that kind of stuff to be happening. Jaden Daniels is probably the best quarterback Missouri will face all year. But Spencer Rattler is a good passing quarterback. However, South Carolina's offensive line is god awful, and Missouri's defensive line, they really heated up against Kentucky. I think they sacked Devin Leary like 4 times. Darius Robinson had 2 of them. I remember Johnny Walker has been very good this year off the edge. Christian Williams, Jaden Jernigan, those guys looked really good against Kentucky. And then South Carolina is 127th in the nation in quarterback sack percentage. So this is a game where you should be getting to Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette are basically South Carolina's entire team. But if Chris Abrams-Draine is shadowing Xavier Legette for the whole game and this defensive line is getting consistent pressure, I still think it's going to be really hard for South Carolina to even match Missouri's point total in this game. And again, at home, I just think that this defense is going to be locked in. They really showed improvement against Kentucky. Like, they dominated after the 14-0 deficit. I mean, they really dominated Kentucky. They figured things out. And even though Devin Leary has been disappointing this year, Kentucky doesn't have a great passing game. That's still an SEC offense. It's a game that had been a thorn in Missouri's side for a long time. And Missouri's defense just clutched up in that game. I really think they're going to carry the momentum forward from that one. And I don't think they're going to let South Carolina get much on them.
I think when we look at Mizzou's defense versus this, I know that I mentioned that on the offensive side, you want to see Connor Tollison clean up just those off-time snaps and just certain little things on the offense. But on the defense, the biggest thing that I'm going to be looking for this game is Tyron Hopper and seeing what he does. Because we need him to get back to the Tyron Hopper of last year. Chad Bailey's been fine, but
speaking of Chad Bailey, he's also banged up. Drink said he's going to be out this week, so you really need Hopper to step up.
So you really need Hopper to step up because we've been waiting for Hopper to be the player that he was last year. And we said at the beginning of the season that Mizzou's greatest strength on this team was linebackers, or at least I know that I said that Mizzou's best position group was linebackers. And that's been wrong this year because Hopper has just been playing meh the entire year. So going to be looking for a big Tyron Hopper game. But you mentioned that South Carolina has the 126th ranked pass block win rate.
The quarterback sack percentage.
Yeah, quarterback sack percentage. Sack percentage can be a quarterback stat as well. But I think that Rattler's a good enough quarterback that he knows when to get the ball out when he can. But after watching the Georgia and the North Carolina game, there's nothing he can do. South Carolina's offensive line is just god awful. Like you said, Johnny Walker, Darius Robinson, and Jaden Jernigan, and a couple other of those guys. They need to be getting to Rattler. And as you mentioned, sold out field. Thanks K-State fans for selling out the stadium for the 3rd time this year.
Yeah.
I think that Faro's going to be rocking again. I'll look up what the weather is going to be in Columbia.
Well, while you're doing that, I was reading this article from Rock'em Nation, and they talked about
it's going to be 74 and sunny, so weather's not really going to be a factor. I
good.
mean, all the Mizzou fans are going to be out there. It's a 2:30 game, so nobody's going to be getting up too late unless you partied way too hard. So the stadium should be filled to the brim. I mean, it was for the LSU game by the start of kickoff, so Faro's going to be rocking.
For sure. And while you were doing that, I actually pulled up this article from Rock'em Nation, Mizzou's SB Nation affiliate, and they had an interview with the South Carolina SB affiliate or SB Nation affiliate, and they talked about how their biggest issues this season are poor offensive line play, awful pass defense in the middle of the field. Spencer Rattler's just been sacked too many times. They struggle at nickelback. The linebackers aren't good in coverage, yada, yada, weak pass rush. This sounds like a recipe for disaster for them coming into Columbia, a game against a 6-1
team. That you mentioned, it's like Mizzou excels at those.
Yeah, like Mizzou's defensive line, it hasn't been awesome this year. I feel like that's a stretch, but they certainly haven't been bad. And they have the guys, they have the talent. and it seems like South Carolina's making anyone's D line look good this year. And then the pass defense is the thing that kind of makes my eyes light up the most when I read that, because there's probably not a better group of receivers that South Carolina will face this year than
Yeah,
Missouri. And I don't see that stopping in this game. I don't see that changing in this one. And they haven't fired their defensive coordinator yet. So look for Mizzou's passing offense to have a bounce back game. I'd be shocked if Brady Cook didn't throw for at least 300 yards.
for sure. I mean, again, you can't get caught looking ahead. Brady can't be just lollygagging throws. He didn't have the greatest game against Kentucky, and he didn't really have the. I mean, he had a solid game against LSU, but those 2 interceptions were terrible. So things that you want to see from Brady Cook are just protect the ball again and just be comfortable in the pocket and just cruise through this game and escape it with no injuries, get into the bye week, and just feel good.
For sure. I think we pretty much have hit on everything that we wanted to. I mean, it'll be hilarious if we hop on the post game and turns out Mizzou loses this one,
Yeah,
but it's just really hard to see that result happening. There's just not much South Carolina does well. I know they played a tough schedule, but I trust Drink to get these guys up for this game and make sure they're not looking ahead to Georgia. They have a bye week coming up. You don't want to go into the bye week with a loss. That would really hurt this season. Fans had high expectations now, and would be a massive letdown if you then lost this game. Not saying you can't still have a good season, but people are kind of talking about 9, 10 wins now, and that becomes a lot harder if you lose to South Carolina of all teams. But
yeah.
with all that being said, though,
One
Brayden,
like
go ahead.
so. I mean, if we are 7-1, I know that you wanted to mention this, so I'm going to remind you. If we are 7-1 going into that Georgia game, and as long as Georgia remains undefeated, we're probably going to have game day in Athens,
Yeah,
which
and that'll be awesome exposure for the program, and then if you can win that game, man, that would be awesome. But
for sure.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But before we wrap this up and put a bow on it, Brayden, what is your score prediction for this game? Who do you have
I'm gonna go Mizzou 35, South Carolina 24. I'm gonna say that we cover. Um, I'm gonna bet on us to lose again. I'm gonna put $10 on South Carolina money line
winning?
because it's been working every time that I've done it. We've won outside of the
Keep
L.
doing it then.
I'm gonna keep betting on Mizzou to lose, but I do think that we win this game.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm going to say Mizzou wins 38-20, very similar to the Kentucky score, although I don't think the 14-0 thing happens in this
Yeah,
game. I just think Mizzou gets out to a big lead, maybe in like the third quarter, because Mizzou struggled in the third quarter just a little bit this year. South Carolina gets a couple scores, makes it a little bit closer, but ultimately Mizzou is going to win this one comfortably and move to 7-1, head into the bye week, and then all eyes are on that Georgia game on the schedule.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that does it, guys. Go ahead and leave your score predictions down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you guys and where your thoughts are at for this game. But we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. You can check out my work on showmefootball.com. And then, Brayden, do I even need to say it?
Make sure to go watch Show Me Movies. Gonna have a movie review out at about like 1 or 2 a.m. tonight because I'm seeing Killers of the Flower Moon. That's a 3.5 hour long movie.
There you have it. And that'll be down in the description as always. So thank you guys for tuning in. And we will see you on the other side of this game. MIZ.
DOU.